Most descriptions of the past are found in historical records and newspaper accounts. Sometimes we look to the arts for glimpses of our past, at images through pictures, and at stories through songs. If lucky, you might find a rhyming vision of the past in the form of poetry, such as that presented by a resident of Lambton during the second half of the 1800s. Robert McBride was a man who felt that he had real grievances in regard to Port Franks and the Canada Land Company, which owned all of the property around Port Franks. On the strength of a map he saw hanging in the office of the Canada Land Company, Robert McBride thought that Port Franks was a flourishing lake port. He bought several lots. When he arrived there in 1851, he found out that there was no lake port at Port Franks. He entered a legal suit against the Canada Land Company, but apparently was unable to get any satisfaction with his legal action. Sometime later, McBride settled in Oil Springs, where he entered into the flour and feed business, and when business was slow, the lumber business. He was there in time for the oil boom, served on the local council, and was a part of the growing community of Oil Springs. 100 years ago, in 1869, Robert McBride published a book of poems with a rather ponderous title of Poems Satirical and Sentimental, and many subjects connected with Canada, including a complete exposure of our county court and division court system, in several theatrical acts and dialogues, showing how the people have been and are now victimized, all tending to prove on the part of those indicated a complete conspiracy set up by them for the purpose of enslaving the people of this country. Also a dissertation of the doings of the Canada Company's land, jobbing, and other matters. Many of Mr. McBride's poems referred to the oil boom, much of which had happened while he was living in Oil Springs. Some poems about his unhappy Port Franks experience. One touching verse was in memory of Anna McGee, who, according to the Post, was the first white person who died and was buried at Port Franks. He writes about her grave, which he says is covered with wild rose bushes. The first two verses go like this: Where wild roses bloom on yon sandy shore, lies Anna McGee, whom we'll never see more. With books and with toys as she used to be, the joy of her parents, this Anna McGee. She's gone to that land from whence none do return, and she's left her own parents in sadness to mourn. Her place is now vacant, which grieves them to see, but she fills it far better, this Anna McGee. Based on one of his poems, titled Farewell to the Lawyers of Lambton, Mr. McBride must have had one or more sad experiences with lawyers. The first verse reads, Farewell unto Lambton, her Philistine hall, her judge and her lawyers, her courts and them all. Farewell to my friends who are out of their camp, may they never come under the shade of its lamp. It's dark and it's dismal, it's death unto me, from blacklegs in office, O Lambton be free. A book containing more than 100 poems contained one, perhaps a eulogy, titled In Remembrance of Jane Lightheart, who died at Oil Springs December 6, 1868, aged 17 years and 6 months. It begins, I saw a maid in youthful bloom, all beautiful and fair. Again I saw her sinking fast, as if oppressed with care. Jane Lightheart was this maiden's name, a sweet and lovely lass. I watched her in her rising years, I loved to meet her pass. On a personal note, for some reason I have not yet been able to determine, a great uncle of mine, Henry Albert Jewell, moved to Petrolia sometime during the 1860s. Thereafter he met and married Elizabeth Lightheart. 3 children were born to this couple over the succeeding 12 years in Petrolia. In 1878, following the death of his father, also named Henry, Henry Jr. returned to Quebec City with his wife and children, where he continued to operate commercially the steam-powered boat his father had owned for many years. Since I can find no other references to a Lightheart family anywhere in Petrolia or Oil Springs records of that era, I consider it very likely that Elizabeth Lightheart and Jane Lightheart might have been sisters, and that by 1868 or earlier, my Henry Jewell and the poet Robert McBride might have been at the very least acquainted with each other. After many successful years as a merchant and at one time mayor in Oil Springs, Robert McBride died in 1895 in his 81st year of life. If there was ever a nomination for a poet laureate for Lambton County, past or present, I think it probably should be Mr. Robert McBride.